Alexander Drago Volkov versus Stefan the Skyscraper Struve is the main event of UFC Fight Night 115, or hashtag UFC Rotterdam. Happens this coming Saturday on UFC Fight Pass. Yep, Volkov versus Struve is a main event. Anyway, my name is Flyin Brian J. This video is brought to you by MMAmania.com. Let's start talking about the matchup with the tail of the tape. Stefan Struve, the tallest man in the UFC, 7 foot tall, 5 inches taller than Volkov. He also has a 4-inch reach advantage. Struve is 1 year older at 29, and Struve lands less strikes per minute. Volkov has some pretty good takedown defense at 75%. Let's talk about their recent opponents. Struve is 2-1 in his last 3. That one loss coming to Jared Rosholt. His victories coming to Antonio Bigfoot Silva with a first-round TKO finish or knockout finish that I'm not impressed by, because I feel like in 2017 or 2016, post-TRT, Antonio Bigfoot Silva could be put down in the first round by a strong gust of wind. Then he defeated Daniel Omielanchuk in the second round with a Darce choke, which was pretty impressive with the grappling, but I was unimpressed with his inability to keep the fight at range, because Daniel Omielanchuk is one of the shortest heavyweights in the UFC. Alexander Volkov, since entering the UFC, has defeated Timothy Johnson and Roy Big Country Nelson. In both fights, he had to overcome some adversity to win, eventually via decision. Against Timothy Johnson, he got dropped with a pretty solid sequence of strikes. Recovered pretty quickly, so he's obviously in very good shape. Against Roy Big Country Nelson, he got ground on for a little bit, grinded on for a little bit, got back to his feet and made Roy pay for putting him on his back at the end of the first round with a pretty decent flurry. Both guys are going to be looking to use their range ordinarily, so I'm very interested to see how that takes place in this fight, where they're facing a guy that's going to be the closest to their equal in range that they're ever going to face in their respective mixed martial arts careers. Volkov, I think, despite having a 4-inch reach disadvantage, is the better guy at keeping range. He uses footwork better than Struve. I think he's a little bit dancier. He's got better movement than Struve, basically is what I'm saying. He also is a little bit quicker with his strikes, and I think that he is better at keeping range. Both guys are really good at throwing jabs, teeps, front kicks to the body, and roundhouse high kicks that are pretty solid. But I think Volkov's come a little bit quicker, and they both have really good intercepting knees to the body when their opponent dares to close that length. But Struve, I think, is willing to let his opponent close that distance, or rather he's just not as good at keeping his opponents away from him. So he uses that intercepting knee more often, where Volkov doesn't need it because he's better at moving laterally. He's better at keeping his opponents at bay with jabs and long straight kicks. Where Struve, he's not that quick, he's not that mobile, and he just relies on the intercepting knee a little bit too much, in my opinion. Now, of course, if the fight were to go to the ground, that's where Struve would have an advantage. He has most of his victories via submission. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but Volkov's no slouch in that area either. He's also decorated in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Volkov is a brown belt in Kyokushin Karate, which he has been training since he was just 9 years old. Now, some intangibles that I want to talk about, basically just about Stefan Struve. Back in 2013, 2014, I can't remember, against Matt Mitrione, he was scheduled to fight, and the night of the bout, he pulled out because he was having some issue with his heart. Turned out to be kind of an anxiety attack because he was coming back from a heart issue. And being a person who suffers from mental illness, namely anxiety myself, I can tell you that I don't feel like it's going to be anything that I'm ever going to overcome. I've been dealing with anxiety for a super long time, and there are times where I get better at it. I get less anxious, I do a lot of meditation, I'm calmer in general, I do some yoga and that type of thing. I'm less scared of things that normally scare me, but it's never going to go away fully. And even though it's been a long time since that happened to Struve, against Daniel Omielanchuk, again, after the fight in his post-fight interview, he said that before the bout, he was dealing with some lactic acid in his extremities. And sure, that is a byproduct of ATP. He just needed to work it out a little bit. But also, to me, it could be an indicator that he was having some anxiety. He was tensing up a little bit. And that right there is one reason why I'm picking Alexander Volkov to get this victory. Now, like I said before, we really have no evidence of these guys facing an equal to them. So we don't know how they're going to deal with a fellow person with a lot of range. But I do believe Volkov will be able to use his footwork, his mobility at a greater advantage to himself than Struve would be. I think Volkov is a little bit quicker. Volkov has less intangibles that make me think, I don't want to pick that guy in any single fight ever, unless he's facing Antonio Bigfoot Silva. And officially, I'm going to take Alexander Volkov via third round KO or TKO. What's fun, I think, is that the over-under is set at 1.5 rounds, and I want you guys to tell me, do you think it's going to go over or under 1.5 rounds? Most of Volkov's victories are in the first round via KO or TKO, I believe 15 of them, and he has 18 KO or TKOs to his name. One more thing that I forgot to mention was that Struve has never been to championship rounds, and Volkov has been there twice. Again, tell me who you're picking in the comment section down below. Over or under 1.5 rounds? Please give the video a thumbs up. I'll see you on the next one. Namaste.